deserved. The next awards presenter tonight is Dennis Lind. Come on up.
It's a pleasure to be here, and at the outset I want to thank the Montana Trial Lawyers Association for having the foresight and the ability to award these various recipients for the outstanding work that they do. And it's encouraging to see the young guns stand up here and the passion with which people approach being trial lawyers. I'm very pleased that I'm able to present an award as the outstanding trial lawyer this year to my partner, Nate Wagner. And just a little bit in terms of Nate's background. He grew up in the Whitefish area, graduated from law school in 2006. Tells me that he had a jury trial shortly thereafter, and after that he was hooked. As you can see from the passion of some of these individuals, Nate is like that, and he said, you know, I think we have a responsibility and an obligation to take the defendants to task when there are factual circumstances which warrant that. And so it reminded me, quite frankly, of, this is my age, so the song The Gambler by Kenny Rogers, you gotta know when to hold them, and you gotta know when to fold them. Well, let's hold them to their responsibilities. And on a personal note, I think Nate has that inherent intuition to know when a jury might accept the arguments that are going to be presented and be damned with what the offers are because they're not sufficient for the injuries received. Nate has tried a jury trial in the last 3 years every year. I'll give you an example of one of those. Not a big case, but a trip and fall case, where we know how difficult it is given the ability to get a verdict in those cases where there's the comparative negligence and the positions that you should have been watching where you were going, and so it's your own damn fault. You got a $5,000 offer on the eve of trial, finally. Went to trial, $100,000 verdict. I want to give you a couple snippets from the trials, or the cases that he handled with respect to what has brought him here for this award. The first was a fatal shooting in Billings by the sheriff's deputies. And I want to give you just a little background with respect to that. The client, the deceased in this matter, was not a model citizen. He had a checkered past. He wasn't going to be the A kind of individual that you like for your client, but he was trying, and he was working with his family. There was a report that came in Billings to the departments that there was a stolen car. And so two deputies in the vehicle spotted a car that they thought was similar in nature to what was reported as being stolen. And by the way, it wasn't. But they followed. They didn't put on their siren, they didn't put on their lights, they just followed him. And it turns out that it was snowing, and he went up this road, and the sheriff's deputy's vehicle got stuck. But there were some teenagers there, and they told the deputies, well, this is a dead end, and so at some point he's going to have to come back. And sure enough, he did. But by that time, they dug their car out of the snow, parked it across the roadway, went to their vehicle, pulled out their AR-15 and their 12-gauge shotgun, and stood there. And as he approached them, held up the guns. And for whatever reason, Lauren decided that he was going to go around him. And so he went into the ditch. They immediately opened fire. The AR rifle shot 17 times. 12-gauge shotgun shot 6. He was stranded in the ditch. There were 6 of those bullets that went into the back of the car. That's where the fatal shot came from. In trying, or in negotiating that case, the lawsuit was filed, state and federal law. The defense, of course, was qualified immunity. You can't sue us. we're not responsible, we can't be held liable. After extensive briefing and negotiation, they came to their senses, and that case settled for $1.25 million. The other case, and the hallmark of the jury case that for which Nate is being honored tonight, is where he represented a small construction company up in Polson. And this little construction company was hired by a middleman contractor out of Georgia. And they were building homes in that area. And as it turns out, the Georgia contractor picked a fight and ended up defaulting the client, the local individual, and so then locked him off the job. And at that point, it was almost completed. The job construction was almost completed. He was owed $175,000. So Nate filed a construction lien, tried to negotiate, got nowhere, and so filed the lawsuit to foreclose on breach of contract, fraud, punitive damages, implied covenant, and they simply would not negotiate a resolution. And it went to trial. After a week-long trial, 12-man jury unanimously came back with a verdict on every count for $1.83 million after they finally received an offer right before trial of $50,000. So it goes to show that where the facts are right, where you have the right kinds of circumstances, stand up and be bold. Take those cases to trial. I'm very pleased with Nate as an attorney, but I'm also pleased not only because of his intellectual prowess and ability as a lawyer, but as his commitment to his family. He makes that a priority. He's here with his lovely wife, Erica, and they have 3 boys that are really busy. William, 14, Drew, almost 12, I think, and Chase, I think almost 11. Did I get that right, guys?
Yes.
All right. They're involved in all kinds of things. This is a family that enjoys Montana and outdoor sports. Nate is the coach and of the teams that all of his children participate in. It's a well-deserved award. Thank you, Nate, and congratulations.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you very much to the MTLA. I've attended a number of these over the years, and I've got to tell you that it's difficult for me to accept being the recipient of this award after seeing the quality people who've won this in the past. So thank you. There are a lot of people that I would have to go through to thank for the outcome that led to this award, but none more so, and I mean this sincerely, than the defendants in the case that Dennis just described. I'm going to tell you a little bit about them briefly, but first I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in a household where the phrase trial lawyer was an accusation and not an honor. I heard a lot about ambulance chasers driving up the costs of everything, and I heard a lot about how lawyers were a drain on the economy and more of a problem than they were worth. And candidly, I believed most of that when I got here in 2003. And I think Greg can probably confirm some of that. And as much as anyone else, I would say it was Greg that helped me to understand how wrong I was, and understand that corporations are going to take advantage of people and consumers are going to be harmed. And we are the only line of defense for that. Regulatory agencies are not going to solve these problems. It's going to have to be trial lawyers. And I realized the truth about the role that we play in society. And I came across a quote. The Justice of the California Court of Appeals, his name's Earl Johnson. And he said, "Poor people have access to American courts in the same sense that Christians thrown to the lions in the Colosseum had access to the Colosseum." And it's true. People who don't have money cannot afford to defend themselves. They cannot afford to vindicate their rights. And if we don't take their cases, they are simply going to be trampled. And both the cases that Dennis talked about fall into that category. The police shooting case, the family's dirt poor. The kid was not a model citizen, as Dennis said, but He doesn't deserve to be executed by the police during what should have been a routine traffic stop. And when his family called me, we didn't know anything about the case other than the family didn't believe that he would have tried to run over the police officer. They just said there's no way he wouldn't do it. No matter what he was accused of, he wouldn't run over a cop. And so we took the case and did discovery and got the video, and sure enough, I mean, he drives down the road and he swerves into the ditch, and the police just absolutely empty their guns into him. And you know, those cases are hard. They're demanding, but they're worth it. And I encourage you all to look into the civil rights arena if you have a chance. The other case, I got a call from a guy in Polson. He's a very small-time construction worker. He owns his own business, but when you say that, you're talking about a guy who doesn't own his own home. He rents. He has a crew that fluctuates between one person, being him, and 3 or 4 people that build houses with him when he's busy. And he called me up and described the circumstances of what was going on this build in Polson. And he was getting absolutely mistreated. And I decided that I would look into it for him to see what I could do. And I started by just writing letters to the other side saying, you guys, you don't have the right to make these demands outside of what the contract says. You don't have the right to lock him off the job. And we wrote some letters and nothing good came of it. And so eventually they did lock him off. We filed a lien. We brought the case. They never offered anything reasonable. And we took the case to trial. And as Dennis indicated, on the eve of trial, they made a token offer. And if there's one thing I would like you to take away from this and my experience with the Montana Trial Lawyers Association is when the folks come here at the conferences and they say, don't settle for less than a case is worth, absolutely, I agree with that 100%. Don't let your fear of your failure and don't let your client's fear that it's not going to turn out for them dissuade you from putting your facts in front of a jury when the case justifies it. And I want to tell you now just a little bit about what we were up against. The COO of this business and the construction foreman who was on site doing most of the bad conduct attended the trial on behalf of the defendants. And if I had called Central Casting and said, give me 2 greasy hillbillies in a coat and tie, and if you can make them be arrogant, that would help too. I couldn't have got 2 better guys. The COO got on the stand during the defense case in chief, and this was actually after we had pretty much proved our case. And he said, all of this that they're talking about is a result of the city of Polson misleading me as to whether or not I even needed a local contractor. I could have just paid the $100 and done this all myself and none of this would have happened. This is basically Polson's fault. The jurors, who are all mostly residents of Polson, are kind of going, oh, okay. So then the foreman gets up to testify, and I'm not kidding. He's got his Bluetooth earpiece in as he mounts the witness stand. Because his time is super, super important to him. I think he was taking calls during a break, and so my assistant, Morgan, who's kind of co-trying the case with me, she says, should we go make him take his earpiece out so that he can't receive coaching or something? And I said, God, no, we are not saying anything about this, and I hope the judge doesn't ask him to take it out. So I want him to have that up there. I want the jury to see he's got his earpiece in because this is not really important. And as if he hadn't already proven that, 4 days of trial, we settle instructions, we give the jury the instructions, but we don't do closing argument until the morning of the 5th day. And these 2 guys get on a plane and fly to Georgia Thursday night and are not there for closing arguments, deliberations, and verdict on Friday. And I think they knew it hadn't gone well, but I think they made it worse by leaving because I don't at all think the jury appreciated feeling like these guys' time was more importantly spent back in Georgia than here in Montana at the trial that they caused. So the jury came back 12-0. It was a great feeling, and it really did save this poor guy's life. I mean, he was going to go bankrupt. He was going to lose everything. Not that he had a lot to lose, but as one of the presenters said today at the trial, it's not what they take away, it's what you're left with. And he was going to be left ruined. And now we've collected a good chunk of the money, and we hope to collect the rest of it for him. Thank you very much for having me and for giving me this award. I appreciate it. I need to thank a couple other people. Everybody thanks their spouse, and I need to thank my wife, Erica. Everyone always says something to the effect I wouldn't be here without her. That's literally true in this case because she filled out my law school application and sent it in. Thanks, babe. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.